Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. This time I'm talking to Courtney Clark, or Courts J as she's known online, about her photography journey and how it has shaped her relationship with the world. Courts is a West Australian-based travel and adventure photographer who shoots landscapes, architecture and portraits. A qualified and practising engineer and a strong advocate for inclusion and diversity, her photographic style is bold and colourful and incorporates elements of symmetry and scale. We discuss how she's continued to develop that style over time with a focus on bright colours and contrasting elements. In 2017, she lost her father suddenly and a close friend 2 months later. These events made Courtney question what she values in life and completely changed her perspective on a lot of things. It made her realise how short and fragile life is, and she has chosen to make the most of every opportunity she gets to travel since. Photography to Courtney is not only a passion, but it's a way for her to keep the connection alive with her father. We discuss her work and how that shapes her photography, her adventures in the Italian Alps and how the pandemic has affected her relationships and provided an impetus to dive headlong into the NFT photography scene. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Courts, welcome to the podcast. How are you going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, really good, really good. It's still summer and, had a relaxing Sunday. How's your day been?
Yeah, it's been good. I went to the beach this morning for a couple of hours before it got too hot. I think we've had a week of like high 30s, so it's been pretty warm this week, but nice beach weather.
So let's start with where you are. I guess, people need to know where you're from and where you are. So where are you? And tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently living in Perth. I moved to Perth just over 3 years ago now. So I got a job here. I actually work as a full-time engineer. Photography is mainly a hobby for me. So originally from Adelaide. So I grew up in Adelaide and then moved over 3 years ago. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Okay. So what got you started with photography and in particular landscape photography?
So I think the first thing that kind of triggered me to get into photography, my dad was into photography, and he actually gave me my first camera. I did an exchange in the US, college exchange in Colorado, and that would have been about 2015, so about just over 7 years ago. So I thought I'm going overseas, like on this big trip, and I'd previously just taken photos with an iPhone when I'd been traveling. So Dad gave me my first camera, which was a Nikon D50 or a Nikon D50. I did a college exchange, and then I did a big road trip around the US at the end of my exchange, which was, I think it was about 5 weeks. And then I spent 2 weeks in Canada. And that trip was kind of what kicked everything off for me. I actually ended up buying a new camera halfway through the trip because I started to try and take photos of stars and realized that the Nikon D50 just didn't have that capability.
Not really cutting it?
No, I did a bit of Googling, like far out. I'm in these incredible places in where was I? I started in Colorado and I went up through Wyoming, Montana, across to Washington State, then up to Canada. So I think it was in Wyoming when I was in quite kind of somewhat deserted areas. And the stars were just so incredible. So I did a bit of Googling to figure out how to take photos of the stars. And the camera just didn't have the capacity for it. So I ended up upgrading to a Nikon, I think it was a D30-200. And I think it just kicked off from there, having a bit of a better camera and then experimenting with, different settings as I went along. And that's kind of what kicked it off.
Oh, cool. So what was it about landscape photography in particular that really got you going in there? I know you do a few other things and, you write into drones and so forth, but I guess was it that trip that started getting you hooked into the landscape genre at all? Or?
Yeah, definitely. Because, growing up in Australia, we haven't really got that many mountains. We have really nice landscapes in terms of beaches and deserts, but I think that was the big one for me, especially in Colorado and, Wyoming, that whole area, and Canada. So I did a lot of hiking on that trip, and I think it was the combination of hiking as well as just wanting to capture, I'd do this big hike, get to the top, and I'd be like, oh my God, this view is just insane. Just like the need to try and capture that. That's sort of went hand in hand, the hiking and the photography. So I did a lot of hikes on that trip. That's kind of how, that was what it started with, was landscapes. And then as I did more and more travel over the years, it became a bit more travel photography, which is a little bit more, I got into portraits. I do take portrait photos when I travel. It's kind of just everything when you travel. It's a little bit of street, it's a little bit of lifestyle type things. So it's sort of broadened from there. But it definitely started with landscapes originally.
Cool. So when you talk about what how things have evolved for you, how would you describe your style?
This is a hard question, and I've thought about this a lot lately because I've seen a lot of just general discussion on Twitter about what makes a great artist is developing a style that's recognizable to that artist.
Yep.
Sometimes I feel like I have that a little bit, and sometimes I don't. But I think in terms of style, in terms of landscapes, I feel like I've developed a style that it really captures the colors and just the boldness. And I think a lot of my style comes from the way that I frame my photos as well. I have a very kind of ties in with my engineering brain, to be honest. But I feel like when I take a photo, symmetry and a sense of scale and framing things perfectly is something that I definitely attribute my style to that, as well as, bringing out colors and just the bold kind of contrasts in the photos as well. So I feel like that's sort of where I'm at with my style. But then it's a little bit different for portraits. I like to do portraits in black and white. I think that definitely brings out more emotion in the portraits.
Yeah, so it certainly can. So when you started, I guess, were you looking to just sort of record memories for yourself, or were you looking to share? And who were you sharing with? Was it for the gram, or was it for for something else?
So when I first started, it was definitely I think I had Instagram and I was sort of posting some stuff on there, but it wasn't really.
Everybody when they go back to their early Instagram.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. Some of the first photos, when I first started taking photos, I would edit them on, I don't know, kind of shitty little editing apps, and I would like max out the contrast and max out the saturation, as everyone does.
Saturation,
yeah. Everyone's like, "Whoa, this looks so cool." I started with that, I guess, and I guess I was posting a little bit on Instagram here and there, and a little bit on Facebook, and I think as I got more and more into it, I started posting more and more on Instagram, and then I guess over time it just evolved into I don't know. I guess the more I did it, you kind of naturally wanted to post more and more. And then as you discover, I think Instagram was a really good way of discovering other photographers and how you're not copying other photographers, but you're kind of seeing what their styles are. Like there was so many different styles, and I think people kind of tended to develop their style based on how their Instagram feed looked. But it meant that you kind of draw inspiration from all different styles to get to the point where I got my own style. So I think, originally it was just for me just to enjoy and look back on. And I also had a GoPro, which I made a few little GoPro videos just of the trip, like little snippets here and there.
Yep.
So I did that for a couple trips, actually. I did that for a trip to Indonesia as well and a trip to New Zealand. And I think, just the more I did little things like that, the more I kind of got more into it and wanted to share it more. So
yeah, cool. How far were you traveling each year, I guess, before the pandemic came along?
So I've been to just over 30 countries. So I spent 5 years at university. This trip that I did, I think it was in my third year of university, which was, about 6 months. But almost every single university break that I had, I would save money. I'd do uni Monday to Friday. It was like 40 hours a week of uni because it was engineering. It was quite full on. And then I would work Friday night and Saturday night at nightclubs to save money. Did that for a whole semester. Well, I did that for my whole 5 years, but you do it all through the semester, and then you get a two or 3 weeks uni break, and I would save all my money and then just book a trip somewhere. So I've traveled to, seen a fair bit of Europe. I've been to Jordan, been to the US, Canada, New Zealand, and then I took a year off after uni and did a 5-month trip around Asia, which was basically almost all of Southeast Asia, Nepal and India, and spent a bit of time in Italy on that trip as well. So I've increased my traveling over time enormously, but up till COVID, obviously, because I haven't really traveled anywhere since COVID started.
Yeah, well, and I think the news very recently was your state, Western Australia's opening up finally to the rest of Australia. So
thank the Lord.
You're going to be able to get out, and we're going to be able to get in, which will be nice.
Exactly. I was actually a bit shocked that it was going to be this soon, but I'm so happy. I cannot wait to get out and travel again. It's
how hard has it been? I guess
Yeah, it's been pretty difficult. So I met my partner in Nepal when I was trekking in Nepal in 2018, and we've done long distance since then. And obviously with the borders, I haven't been able to get out. He hasn't been able to get in. So we haven't seen each other for 2 years and almost 2 months now. And my family's in another state. They're all in South Australia. So it's been a bit, I've seen them a little bit in the last 2 years when the borders were open. But I think the combination of that, not having my partner, not really being able to go out to the mountains or whatever, has been, it's been a pretty tough 2 years. So I'm very much looking forward to things kind of changing for the better this year.
Yeah. So how have you handled that? What things have you done, I guess, to try and, emotionally, I guess not prepare yourself, but deal with that sense of isolation, or the sense of, you can't get out, you can't see your family, you can't see your partner, etc.
Yeah, it's been pretty hard, to be honest. I think I've invested a lot of my time into my current job. So I probably have been a bit of a workaholic, but also, finding the NFT world and the Twitter space sort of, I think it was late August, early September was when I found that sort of world. And I think that really brought a little bit more of a sense of purpose back into my life, because when you've got nothing really to look forward to, I think was probably the hardest thing. So having that
and not knowing when the borders were going to lift so that you could actually do it. There's no end in sight, I guess.
Exactly. That was it. So I think, I definitely had more than one emotional breakdown, but I think I've just really invested myself into work. And in terms of my engineering job, I've gotten to a point now where my job's a little bit sometimes office based, sometimes field based. So I travel offshore for work. So in the last 3 years, I've kind of got snippets of being offshore to get enough experience to land myself a full-time offshore role. So come I think it's first or second week of April, I will be rotating offshore, which is basically means I'll spend 3 or 4 weeks offshore at a time, and then I'll have 3 or 4 weeks where I don't have to work at all. So I basically only work half the year. So I'm glad that I've put in the work in the last 2 years to get to that point, to secure that role, because now I have so much flexibility in terms of traveling because I have half the year off. So I think that's I've done well in that sense, at least for the last 2 years.
So now things are starting to open up. Where first? Adelaide and then Nepal, or Nepal then Adelaide?
Yeah, I reckon probably Adelaide first. And then I sort of want to just see how things play out with international travel. Just have to be a little bit make sure that I can, get back in for my next
Yeah.
hitch kind of thing. But definitely Nepal. And yeah, there's a lot of places on my bucket list for this year to travel to,
Yeah.
for sure.
So do you want to name a couple of names?
Oh yeah, sure. So I think the biggest one that I've been wanting to go to for a long time is Namibia.
Oh yeah.
I've seen some incredible photos of Namibia, the dunes there, the canyon. I can't remember the name of it, Fish Canyon or something like that.
Yeah.
Some of the photos I've seen, they look incredible. And also, I before the borders shut, 2 days before the borders shut, I had a full trip to Chile booked. So I had to cancel everything. It was for a friend's wedding, but would love to go and do that trip and hike Torres del Paine and go to the Atacama Desert. So Chile's really high on my list. But I think for this, while I'm doing this role rotating and I've got, quite a lot of time off, I really want to go to the places that are a bit, harder to reach usually and further away. So I think South America and Africa are going to be really big on my list. Morocco, Egypt as well. Yeah, I think there are a few places, but just in general, as much as I can see of Africa and South America.
Sounds fantastic. And, I imagine you starting to really think about the planning for some of those trips and, trying to work out all the logistics, etc., is going to be an interesting exercise in and of itself.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll actually be, for the role that I'm starting in April, that's a 6-month role. And then I kind of go on to a different role, which is rotating out of Africa. So I'm hoping that they let you do side trips on the way home, so I don't have to fly all the way back to Perth to go somewhere in Africa. It's already be there. But yeah, there's a lot of, I'm definitely a planner when it comes to taking overseas trips. I'm an Excel spreadsheet kind of gal.
Nothing wrong with that. I think planning's a good thing, and I guess that probably comes a little from your engineering background as well. You don't just build something. You think about it first and work out how you're going to build it before you get there.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep.
So talking about that, do you take that same sort of approach to your photography? If let's say you're just going out for a weekend shoot down at the beach, is it just, I'll just go where the wind takes me, or is it more a planned exercise, something that you think a bit about beforehand?
Yeah, I usually plan it. So when I'm going, to be honest, I don't really shoot much around Perth. I feel a bit snobby in terms of the type of landscapes that I want to take photos of. So the main areas that and I probably will go back as well in one of my swings off down south. But Esperance is one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Yeah.
So going down there, I did a trip there after Christmas for 10 days. It was a 10-day road trip. And I picked all the spots, had all the spots that I wanted to go to and sort of tried to plan out, all right, this morning I'm going to go here. And I think one of the other things using a drone, you've got to be quite conscious of wind, especially in WA. So it can really throw your plans a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's kind of check the wind for the next morning. If the wind's going to be okay in this particular place, shoot here. Otherwise you might have to go somewhere else or, come back to that place or commit to, all right, we'll have to do that place when I come back down to Esperance so I can move on to the next one. So yeah, it's a little bit of logistics, but I usually have a plan of what I want to shoot. And I usually have all right, these are my ones that I absolutely, these are the beaches that I absolutely have to go to and get shots at. So they're priority. So then if the weather's bad and I can't shoot as much as I want, the other ones I'll do on another trip. That's usually how I run with it.
Sure. So how do you deal with? Obviously the weather's outside your control, but let's say you get there and you've forgotten to put the memory card in the drone, for example, which I've heard a few people do. But how do you deal with things when they don't go to plan? And because spending a bit of time planning, obviously you get there, and how do you deal with the disappointment?
Oh, I don't even know. I get really, really frustrated, that's for sure. I actually on this last trip to Esperance, oh my God, I felt like such an idiot. I forgot my camera battery charger. Like the one thing one of the main things that you need. I had a cable, but it wasn't really working properly to charge my camera. So but the trip was primarily like, for me, when I shoot beaches, I think drone is the main way that I can capture, the beauty of the beaches. Depending, like, sometimes I can get nice, just general shots with my normal camera, but especially down south on those beaches, because the beaches are so expansive. I felt the only way that you can capture them well is with a drone. So I wasn't too phased, but yeah, it's pretty frustrating. I always say to myself, if I've forgotten forgotten to put a memory card in, I'll just try and go back another day. But yeah, if I've forgotten something that I like really need, like I was trying to search for like camera shops to try and buy a battery charger, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to find anything. There's country towns.
I was going to say there's not much in Esperance that'll sell you Nikon charger. Yeah.
No. So I usually
you can order one in.
Yeah, I know. That's it. But what I usually do is, depending on how rushed I am trying to get everything prepared, I usually write a massive list of everything, just a huge brain dump of everything that I know I'm going to need the week leading up to going. And I just open it and add to it when I remember, oh, yeah, I've got to take that, got to take that. And then I tick things off the list as I pack them to make sure that I don't forget. And that's usually what I do. So I'm usually pretty good with it. But yeah, the last trip, I think everything was just so hectic leading up to it. I just slipped my mind.
Yeah, nothing worse than forgetting something like that. I remember a shoot I went on recently and got to the beach, well before sunrise. Got the tripod out, got the camera out, looked at the bottom of the camera to put it onto the tripod, and the tripod shoe wasn't on the bottom of the camera. It was on a different body that I'd used a few days before. And I'd forgotten to transfer the shoe from there to there, and I didn't have a spare. So that was, no long exposures, no blue hour shot or anything like that. So yeah, it's frustrating. That's part of the joy of photography, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Dealing with the disappointment.
Yeah, that's it.
So when you're out there, what sort of workflow are you going through? And you can either, do you put the drone up first, or do you set up the tripod? I guess it depends on what kind of shoot you're doing. But what's your normal sort of list of things that that are going through your mind when you're getting to a location and you're setting up?
Yeah, it's a good question. I get really, if it's like a perfect morning, if it's like a really nice sunrise or something, I get super excited and I never know what to do first. So I think what I usually do, if I know that sometimes I know whether I'm going to be in the shot or not, like sometimes I'm a bit, oh no, I'm not going to put myself in this one. Like I look shit today. Like if I'm going to put myself in the shot, I need to make sure that I'm like, I've got, I don't know, nice clothing, or I've got my hat and my hair looks fine. Like it sounds a bit.
Got your red or yellow jacket.
Yeah. So if I'm hiking, I usually put myself in the shot. I think for the beach shots, sometimes I'll just pop the drone up and I'll just get like a, shot without me in it. But if I'm going to be in the shot, yeah, I definitely have to like plan what I'm going to wear, whether it's like a dress or whether it's just hiking clothes with a beanie or a hat or some kind of accessory on my hair. But yeah, I'll usually walk around, depending on how much time I've got for, like if it's a sunrise shoot, which a lot of them are, I'll definitely walk around to try and get the right vantage point and try and see. I usually look for, especially if it's like a mountainous kind of area, I look for something that I can go and stand on that puts me in a good spot in the frame and kind of gives you that sense of scale, which is usually quite far away. So I'll try and set up the tripod so that you can see me sort of in the shot standing somewhere, take a few photos like that. And then, yeah, I'll usually put the drone up afterwards, because it takes me, obviously each drone battery is like 30 minutes or so. So I know that that's going to takes a while to figure out what the best, view is as well. And you've got to move the drone around quite a bit, try different heights. I think it takes a while to figure out, how high it should be for each shot, because sometimes you can put it up and it's only like 10 or 20 meters above you, and it can actually be a really good shot depending on which way, you're looking. So it takes me a while with the drone to like, all right, I fly it around a little bit sporadically. Sometimes I'll pop it up, I'll do a few shots at this height, I'll pop it up more, do a few shots there, send it over here, turn around. I'm kind of just going back and forth in the sky to try and figure out, what looks good and take photos along the way. And I've been taking a few videos as well with the drone. So it's sort of like, it takes a bit of time to like figure out what I actually want to take the video of, because I've got to fly over it first to see that it actually looks okay. It's a bit of a process.
So what sort of things, I guess, you're trying to communicate with your photography, or, get across to somebody that might see it?
I think in terms of travel photography in general, I think I like just capturing, landscapes definitely, but along the way, just, little interactions with people, or just little scenes that you see. That's one of my favorite things to capture, which I probably don't share as much of. I used to share a lot on Instagram stories, just those little moments of little things that, I don't know, you kind of know what I mean. Like, it's not like the absolute banger landscape photo, but sure. I like, just those little moments along the way. So I like capturing those just to give a bit of a feel of like, the area that I'm traveling through, and I like sharing those quite a bit. But I think the main thing I try to get across is, as I said before, sense of scale, and trying to, like, if I make myself quite small in the photo, it gives a perspective of how vast an area is, and how, like, it kind of makes the place itself look that much more incredible, because it gives you a sense of, oh my God, this place is so big. Like, it's so, mountains are so tall, and you look at this tiny little person in it. So I think sense of scale is definitely something that I try and get across. And I just like to bring out the colors, and I think lately I've been using a little bit more Photoshop to kind of get across how I see what I'm looking at when I take those photos, because obviously everyone's got a different perspective. Everyone's looking through a different lens, their own eyes. So I try and incorporate like Photoshop to make the image just that much better, to kind of, even lately I've been doing quite a lot of composites, just to get across like how I feel, like putting a different sky in, or there was a photo I shared recently with a little rock pool surrounded by rocks. And so I Photoshopped the rocks a bit, and I Photoshopped the water to make it, crystal clear, because that is just the epitome of what that area is like. Not necessarily exactly what that scene looks like, but that's how beautiful the area is. So I think I've been experimenting a little bit more with that lately as well.
Okay. I guess, there's, I was having a conversation a couple of weeks ago around those sorts of things, where do people fit on that spectrum between journalistic, this is the scene and this is what I saw, versus the artistic end, where, you're starting to enhance skies and so forth. And, I personally think there's space for all of those. Where do you sit in terms of the specific conversation was actually about, I think it was actually about the International Landscape Photographer of the Year competition, and the fact that most of the images look very polished, quite processed, hard to say whether or not there's composites in that, winning group or not, and I'm not casting any aspersions on the fact that they've used composites or not, but, whether or not that then means there should actually be a specific category for that, I guess, manipulated images versus the more naturalistic images, which are, closer to what you get out of a raw file, with minimal processing, and I guess, there's always that argument about, well, it's the photographer's choice and it's the artistic expression of the photographer to make the choices around, where in that spectrum they want to fit. I guess, how do you feel about those sorts of things, and where do you see, in particular things like AI? There's bit of discussion going on about AI actually now starting to generate, images, beyond just, the changes that you could make in, say, Luminar or one of the other AI apps that are out there. Where do you sit with some of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I feel like that's interesting you talk about the photography competition. I think in terms of a photography competition, yeah, there should probably be a separate category that is for composites. Because there's definitely a massive difference that you can make if you're blending more than one photograph together with each other. But yeah, I think.
And for me, as I said, I do composites myself. But I'm very open about if it's a composite.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's so funny because when I posted a few on my Instagram, I got so much backlash. Like,
really,
this place doesn't exist. Like, haha, this is so photoshopped. I got so much hate, and it was incredible. It was from people that I don't know, and it's like, photography is, it is an art form, and I think also as well, being on Twitter, I think it's kind of opened my eyes to digital art in general, which I didn't really know about before Twitter. Like, I knew that there was artists out there, but I'd just not been exposed to that kind of thing before, because I'm not, if I'm scrolling on Instagram, there's not really stuff posted like that, or if there is, I just haven't been following it because it's not something that I've, I guess, been exposed to or really knew about.
It is there, but I think you've kind of got to go look for it. It's like anything. You can look for makeup, you can look for, clothing, you can look for dogs or pets or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess if you don't know that sort of art exists out there, you can't go searching for it if you don't know about it. I don't know. So, but I think it's awesome. I think probably that's what's also inspired me to be a bit more creative in the way that I edit photos lately and try and combine photos together. So yeah, I think it's I think there's a lot of potential in that space, especially in the NFT world for because I think also what I'm seeing as well is can be hard to stand out as a landscape photographer sometimes, or just as a photographer in general, because there's so many people into photography. And I think working with composites and kind of pushing it into a bit more borderline reality and not reality, I think that is kind of what can help you stand out, because you're putting your own artistic touch onto it that's kind of outside of just changing the contrast and changing some of the colors. Like, it's that next level. So I think there's definitely room for that.
Yeah. I've seen some people describe themselves as digital artists first and foremost, but they will use photography as one of the mediums that they're, working with. And, for me, particularly from an artistic perspective, I don't necessarily want to see a fantasy landscape. I don't want to see, like the Aurora Australis or Borealis over the top of the Sydney Opera House, for example. That kind of, I get it. Some people may love that sort of thing and might, want that on their walls or, in their feed or whatever. But I guess, for me, I like stuff that's kind of rooted in reality, but I get that, artistic expression. And as I said, I've done composites myself where, I've had a star trail shot over the Sydney skyline, for example, and you can't really see stars in Sydney. There's a few that you can't make star trails in Sydney. It's just impossible with your light pollution, But it makes an interesting looking image and it looks good, and but I guess and for me, it's more about that use of different skills. I mean, yes, I took all of the Star Trail shots. There were 35 odd shots in the Star Trail that then had to be blended together to make the background image for the sky. Then I had to be in position to take the image of the skyline and all the rest of that. And then there's the editing side of things as well. So for me, it's that skills combination that is a little bit different, and I equally, admire people that are able to get things in one shot. Good luck getting a Star Trail over Sydney, for example. But people that can get stuff in one shot. I do a lot of exposure blending, for example. A lot of my work is based around that, where I'm taking 5 or 6 exposures and then blending them together to get the dynamic. And mainly, it's managing dynamic range more than anything. Because the limits of the camera body that I've got and the sensor and everything are such that I can't manage the dynamic range in a single shot for some of the style of, a sunrise shot that I'm doing, because you've got really dark shadows and you've got really bright highlights, and the camera can only manage a small spectrum of that dynamic range.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess talking about, those people that you've seen, who's inspiring you, or, whose work do you kind of aspire not to copy or emulate, but to kind of, who do you see as being somebody that you'd like to emulate?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think probably from Instagram days, one of the biggest photographers that inspired me, especially for the Dolomites in Italy, was Julia Gartner. And we've actually, since she's come over to Twitter, we've actually connected quite a bit, which has been awesome, because I've followed her on Instagram for years. So that was she was a massive inspiration to me to visit the Dolomites. I think just seeing the beauty of the mountains in Italy that I just had no idea existed. So definitely her. In terms of names, I can't really pick many specific names from Instagram that inspired me early on. Dad definitely inspired me just to get into photography in general. And I think I would love to be able to shoot film as well. I've got, when my dad passed away, he left a whole bunch of photography gear that I didn't even know that he had half of this stuff, like an old Hasselblad, one of the old Linhof cameras, which is like the real big, heavy one, a little brownie box, and just all this film stuff. So he was the biggest inspiration for getting into it to begin with, because I knew that, I've got some of his black and white photos framed. But in terms of style as well, I'm just trying to think. For drone-wise, definitely Mer Watson. I think her beach photos are incredible. So she's helped me out with some really, good tips for areas to shoot down on the South Coast as well. I guess just random photographers on Instagram as well, just sort of searching through and seeing all the different
you see and you go, oh, that's good.
Yeah, especially for locations. Like, I'd seen a few photos from Jordan, and I was like, wow, this looks incredible. And I just didn't even know that if I didn't have Instagram, I wouldn't have known that such a incredible, landscape places existed. So I think from seeing photos of Jordan on Instagram, I was like, yep, I'm going there. I booked a trip, and that was one of the best trips I've ever done. And I'd love to go back, because it was still sort of in that transitional phase of feeling like I can take good photos. I've been doing this for nearly 8 years now, but I think the first sort of 4 years, pretty much 4 years, was just experimenting and trying different styles, and probably didn't do as much research into the best times to go and the best sort of how to get a good shot. I guess it took a really long time, I felt, for me to get to that point. But yeah.
So did you do any formal education, or was it all self?
Yeah, pretty much all self-taught, to be honest. Dad showed me just the basics of what, model the camera settings to. And then I think mainly self-taught after that. Sometimes I just go on Google stuff if there's a particular way that I wanted to shoot something. I did a bit of research about different lenses, and I think when I got a f1.8 lens, which was for my Nikon camera, and that was actually what I took my Genesis piece on foundation, that portrait. I took that on a Nikon with a Sigma f1.8 lens. I think that kind of seeing how much detail you could capture with a lens that the aperture goes that low, that was really quite eye-opening. And I definitely need to upgrade my photography kit now, because I ended up selling that lens because I needed to get some more money to buy a new camera, because I wanted a camera that was a bit more compact and a lens that I could take one lens with me that could capture quite a range of what do you call it? Depth of fit, or what is it? Focal length? Focal length. I'm not attempts sometimes. But yes, I got an 18 to 105 millimeter. Because I was traveling with, when I did this big trip around Asia, I was traveling with so much gear with my drone as well, and all my, like, everything was in a backpack for, all my clothes for 5 months, and then all my camera gear in my front backpack. So I had to kind of be as compact as I could without breaking my back. But yeah, that's I think that kind of opened my eyes to what I could capture when I was experimenting with different lenses and stuff.
I guess that brings me to another question around, when you are traveling and preparing to travel. One of the things that a lot of people, and I know I do it all the time when I'm if I'm going overseas, which I haven't done for a while, but is what is it that is in your backpack? What's in your camera bag? What do you leave because the weight is too much, or what do you? I'm always tossing and turning around whether or not I take the 70 to 200, because it's a big lump of a lens, and I mean, it takes some beautiful photos up real close, but geez, it's a bugger to carry around with you. And when you're getting on a plane where you've got a 7 kilo limit for you're on in cabin luggage, it's a bit of a beast to include.
Yeah, so definitely.
What's in your camera bag when you go traveling, and what do you leave out and why?
So when I go traveling again, now that our borders are almost open, it'll probably be a bit different from previous traveling, because I have gotten to the point where I'm going to upgrade my camera and get a few different lenses. But for that big trip that I did, it was just the Sony camera body with the 18 to 105, just the one lens. And then, because I obviously wanted to take my laptop so I could edit photos, take 3 hard drives, and then I had my drone with my 2 spare batteries. Obviously all the chargers. That was pretty much it on that trip. But I have upgraded my my camera backpack to a very expensive one, but it was a present, so I didn't have to pay for it, which was nice. But I got a new backpack that has quite a lot bigger than my other one, and it's a special photography one. It's from the brand Wandered. It's really, like, it's got so many different compartments. So I think I will. I think I'm going to upgrade to the Sony A7 III, I think it is. Maybe I'm still sort of deciding, but I have a Sony at the moment, A6000. But yeah, definitely want to upgrade just to get the higher quality, high resolution. And then I will probably I really, really want to get a bigger zoom lens, like 70 to 200 or something like that, because especially for wildlife shots, I think especially when I go to places like Namibia and Africa, I really want to be able to capture more wildlife, and also just to get that even better sense of scale. So definitely a big zoom lens like that. And I want to get a couple, like just a 35 millimeter with a lower aperture, because I think my current lens, the lowest aperture is 4, I think. So I want to get some that have just a bit lower. And then I sold my old drone, and I've got a Mavic 2 now. So I've got 4 batteries for that because 3 was just not quite enough. So 4 batteries for that.
An expensive habit we've got, isn't it?
Yeah, God, I know. So yeah, it'll definitely be the drone and the tripod, and then obviously all the hard drives, of which I do need to get a few spares just in case one shits itself. And then laptop. So yeah, quite a lot. But I think I do get really frustrated when I don't have something that I want. Like I don't have this particular thing and I wish I had brought it. So I tend to be an overpacker for that reason, even if it's heavy, like just so that I've got everything. Because yeah, if you don't have that one lens that you need, it is a bit frustrating.
Yeah, no, I know the feeling. I know the feeling, which is why I tend to, I tend to err on the side of putting that big lump of a 70 to 200 in because I need it.
Yeah, I know, that's it. But yeah, I think because I've got this backpack now that pretty much fits everything and it's really comfortable, I'm going to take as much as it will let me fit.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Fair enough. What's the most memorable experience you've had out shooting?
I think Jordan was definitely pretty special just in terms of everything, like walking around Petra. That was pretty special. I'm trying to think of like a specific. Okay, I've got 2. So one would have been a shot that I took of Annapurna, which is Nepal. So we were on the trek. We weren't even supposed to do Annapurna. So I flew into Nepal to do Everest Base Camp. And it was in September. It was quite foggy. You need perfect weather conditions to fly into Lukla to start the trek, because the runway is 500 meters long and it's on a cliff. So
yeah, I've seen footage of planes landing and taking off there, and yeah, it doesn't look safe.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we were supposed to do Everest. We couldn't fly there. We waited at the airport every day for like 5 days, and we're like, nah, we've got to do something else. So we decided to do Annapurna instead. It was kind of our only other option, really. So we did Annapurna Base Camp, and on the way, there's a sunrise sort of spot that you can go. It's called Poon Hill. And we were walking up. It was still very foggy, very cloudy. And we were basically walking up through the fog at sunrise. And I was thinking to myself, like, we're not going to see anything. There's so much fog, get to the top. It's still really foggy. Can't see a thing. And we hadn't seen, it was probably like an hour hike in the morning to get to the top. And so we didn't really know what the surroundings were going to look like. It was, you had no concept of what you'd be seeing. Sun came up and it was like a 10-minute window, if that, where the sun was just peeking through. The clouds cleared enough to leave kind of like a cloud inversion, and you could just see Annapurna so perfectly. It's the photo that I took is in my first collection on OpenSea, so you might have seen it, but it's kind of like a purpley shot, and that was just like incredible, like seeing just that split 5-10 minutes where the clouds cleared perfectly enough to get this photo, and I was running around like a mad woman trying to get like all the different angles, set up my tripod quickly. That was perfect. And then fog came back in, clouds came back in, and couldn't see it, so we got really lucky with that one. That was a perfect morning. And then I think the next best one is, which I feel like a massive idiot, to be honest, because when I took this photo, it's on about a 3.5-week trek, and I downloaded the photos to my phone because my camera has Wi-Fi, because I didn't take my laptop with me on this trip because I had to carry all my other stuff, and it was hiking for 3.5 weeks. So I was like, right, I've got a big memory card. It should be fine. But my memory card ran out. So I downloaded some photos to my phone thinking it would keep the same resolution, and it didn't. And so some of the best photos that I have are like shitty phone resolution, and I like kick myself over it all the time.
It's the one thing I cannot understand about Canon, Nikon, Sony, if you're listening, fix your phone apps, because I mean I use the Canon remote app on my phone for shooting long exposures mostly. And from a shooting perspective, it's absolutely great. But if I transfer anything from my camera to my phone, it's going to do a JPEG conversion. And so I get a RAW as a JPEG, which then, from an editing perspective, as you know, you can't do anything with. Well, you can, but you can't do half as much as what you can with the RAW, And it's like, just fix your app, please.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it was probably a bit naive of me, but I was like, it'll be fine. Like, at least I've got them downloaded. But the photos that I captured, and I'm going to go back and do this trek 100%. I'm going to redo this trek because it was like the best views I have seen in my entire life. And it's different to a lot of, like, I think with, the evolution of Instagram, there's these places that become really popular. Everyone wants to go there because they become Instagram famous. But I felt like on this trek, it was stuff that not that many people had actually seen or taken photos, from a landscape photography perspective that had been shared on Instagram. It was kind of like just different. So I did this trek, which was in December, so it was in winter, which is the dry season in Nepal. But it was to Everest, but you kind of go halfway along the Everest trek. Then you kind of divert to the side and you go to this place called Gokyo Ri, which is a little village. There's a lake there. The village is called Gokyo, and then Gokyo Lake, and then Gokyo Ri is like a mini sort of summit that you can do. Which is about 5,500 or 5,600 meters. So we went up there for sunset, and from Gokyo Ri, you can see 121 different mountain peaks, including Everest, all around you. And it was like clear skies, sunset, the colors. It was just like the most incredible view I have ever seen in my life, I think. So yeah, that was one of the most memorable experiences.
Yeah. How about horror stories?
I'm sure I've got some horror stories. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yep. Okay. I've got the perfect story, which is like the scariest one. So this is actually also a photo that was in my first collection. It was in the Dolomites in Italy. So I was traveling around the Dolomites for, I think it was about 2 weeks, and I was just had a little hire car, a little Fiat Panda, and just camping on my own, and sometimes sleeping in my car because I was trying to save. This was the start of my 5-6 month trip. So I did Italy for a couple of weeks and then went on to Asia. And I was wanting to go to Alpe di Susi, which is an alpine meadow, and you can't actually drive into the area where a lot of, where you're going to get the best shots. You can't drive in there. I think it's between like 8 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Yep.
And the accommodation near there was really expensive, like a couple $100 a night. So I planned to drive there super early in the morning. It was like a 2-hour drive or something from where I was camping. And I was there in summer, and I didn't check the weather before driving, and it started to snow. And I thought, it's summer, it'll be fine. Like, it'll just be a little bit of snow. So I started driving up these switchbacks. Snow's getting heavier, getting a little bit more worried.
Didn't have chains in the car?
Sorry?
Didn't have chains in the car for the tyres?
No, it was a little Fiat Panda, and it was summer, so I didn't even think snow was going to be a thing. And so anyway, so I kept driving, and then there was one of those, it was like the traffic lights that are sort of automatic, go red and green, because they were doing roadworks at the top of this road. And so there was obviously no one there because it was like 3 a.m. and the light was red. So I stopped, and snow was just getting so heavy, and I was like, shit, should I turn around? Anyway, so when the light went green, I started to drive, and I was just spinning wheels, and I was like, what am I going to do? And then I literally couldn't like turn around. So I ended up reversing down switchbacks for 45 minutes to get out of the snow, because I was terrified to try and turn around, because I thought my car was just it felt like it was just sliding everywhere. So I was trying to reverse in the same tracks as I had gone up. And like, because it's a switchback, you kind of like, some sections had guardrails and some sections didn't. And I actually thought, oh my God, am I gonna have a car crash and die? Like, I was terrified. But I managed to get out of it, managed to get down to where the snow was kind of, the snow was melting on the road because it was not quite so high and it wasn't as heavy. Yeah, that was terrifying. But I ended up going, so scary. It was just one of those moments where, like, it's summer. You would know, like, I wouldn't think it would snow in summer, but as an Australian, you tend to not
in the Alps in Europe. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it can snow here on Kosciuszko in summer. It's rare, but it does happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I've been in a number of places in Europe, around, not necessarily full summer, but around April, May, where you think, oh yeah, it's not going to snow. Even in the UK, where it rarely snows outside of February. And sitting there, we were actually going to go on a picnic with the wife, family, and the kids. And we got to the picnic grounds, and this cloud come over and got heavier and heavier, and it started to sleet and then started to snow in May. And I'm sort of sitting there going, really?
Yeah, it's crazy how rapidly it can change.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that's the thing. I guess you just got to kind of prepare for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
What have you learned about the world through photography, do you think?
Oh, probably the biggest one is to get up for sunrise. I think it's really, like, sunrise is just such a perfect time of day, and it's so easy to just sleep through it. And I think as well, get the sleep that you need, but there's so much to see out there, and trying to just make the most of every day. And just think that was something that I definitely learned, especially on my big trip. Like, the more time during the day that you spend, the more you're going to see, the more you're going to experience. I think that's definitely a big one. And it's just, especially traveling around Asia, I think it really gave me a different perspective on the way people live their lives, in terms of, like, in Nepal, for example, like, my partner, he's very, very, generous, kind, has gratitude for the smallest things. Mm-hmm. And we, in a, Western society, we take things for granted of how easy we have it and how lucky we are to have everything we need at our disposal, essentially. So just being able to appreciate the little things, like having air conditioning, like a lot of places around the world don't have air conditioning, and it's just a simple thing that, we get so used to. So trying to appreciate the little things, because there's so many people that don't, that aren't as lucky or as fortunate to have those things. They're kind of the main things.
That reminds me, actually, one of the things I've heard you talk about in spaces on Twitter, and seen in your feed a bit, is your advocacy for inclusion and diversity. Talk to me a bit about that, and what makes you passionate about that, and why is it so important?
Yeah, for sure. There's so many different layers to it. I think it kind of started with, so as I am an engineer, I work in quite a male-dominated industry. My team is basically all white males. So just, I think it's easy for them to kind of not appreciate perspectives outside of being a, middle-aged white male. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's,
I'm one, and I know that it sets up a set of biases that I actively try to, counteract where I can. But I know that there's some there.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's there's so much value to be had by including perspectives from, all different genders, all different, people with different abilities, people with different sexualities, people from different countries with different religions. Like, there's so many different perspectives that are really important to have just in society in general. And yeah, as you said, there's so many biases at play that, maybe someone that doesn't speak English as a first language, that speaks English as a second language, people can have an unconscious bias towards that, oh, maybe their opinion is not as important, or they're not as smart. And it happens with women as well. Like, women are often seen, especially in an engineering world, as not being, we may not be as confident, but that's kind of interpreted as they don't know their stuff as well, and they're not as capable. So it definitely stemmed from being an engineer, to be honest. And really, I've seen how hard it is for women in this industry to, especially offshore, because offshore is quite offshore on drilling rigs, basically, is where I work. And sometimes I'm one of 5 women on a rig of almost 200 people. And it can be really hard to stand your ground and be resilient and make sure that your opinion gets heard and that your voice gets heard. So, I definitely think it's important to raise awareness about it and just have it as this ongoing conversation and talk about it, whenever. Really, it needs to be something that the more you talk about and the more people recognize, and the more people understand what unconscious biases there are and when they're at play and how to kind of recognize them. I think that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, being a white middle-aged male, I'm quite aware of the biases that I have, or that society sort of applies, in some cases as well. And I don't always succeed, but I try to counteract some of those biases by sitting there, try to be more patient, try to be more open to different opinions and different voices. And from my perspective, it's really important that women, people of colour, Indigenous people, they all get a voice. People of different sexualities, etc. They all get a voice, because their voices, particularly in the artistic world, are equally as valid, if not, more valid in some cases, when you start to talk about Indigenous art and those sorts of things,
Definitely.
And so from my perspective, it is really important to get those voices heard. And, it's something that I'm, trying to do. It's interesting, landscape photography, tends to be a fairly privileged occupation / hobby, whatever, for and the vast majority of people are white, middle-aged, and male that do it. So trying to find those voices and trying to get those voices heard is something that I'm definitely trying to actively do as part of this podcast. So for me, it's an important thing to keep in the back of my mind when I'm talking to people about various stuff, to make sure that that's something that doesn't get forgotten, and where possible, get it talked about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So what advice would you give the 10-year-old Courtney Clark?
Oh, 10-year-old Courtney, let me think about this. I think the biggest thing for me is kind of like I said before, try and enjoy the present. I think something that, and I still struggle with to this day, is I'm always kind of I'm sort of like, okay, when this happens, I'll be happy. When this happens, I'll be happy. When this happens, I'll be happy. And it's kind of hard. It can be quite hard to focus on, doing the things that make me happy now. I think COVID's kind of exacerbated that a little bit as well. But trying to just enjoy the present moment and have gratitude for the little things, and to keep reminding myself of that, because it is so easy to get into, a spiral of, especially being locked in Western Australia. Like, I'm not really happy today, but I'm not really doing anything about it. But, I've got so much to look forward to that I do need to just kind of enjoy the present moment. So I think that's definitely a big one. And I think, there's a lot after my dad passed away, there's a lot that I learned from that. Which I don't know if technically I would tell my 10-year-old self that, but just things like, we're always taught, a lot of the time we're taught that you need to get a good job, you need to, buy a house, you need this is all the steps that you need to do between here and being a successful person. And I think we put a lot of emphasis on, if you're wealthy, then you're successful. And after my dad passed away, he wasn't a wealthy guy. He'd been through some issues in his life, and he ended up declaring bankruptcy like a couple of years before he passed. So he had like $200 in his bank account when he passed, and no savings. So when we went to his funeral, the amount of people that were there and the amount of people that only had good things to say about him, the kind of person he was, that's something that I constantly try and remind myself of, is what kind of person do you want to be? Like, that's the most important thing. If you can have a good impact on other people, it doesn't matter if I've got however much money in my bank account when I die. No one's going to care about that, other than,
you won't.
Exactly. So I think that's something as well. Just kind of impact can you make on people in this world is more important than having a shitload of money when you die.
I think that's a really important point. That I remember my grandfather many years ago telling me that you've won at life if you die owing somebody else money.
Yeah.
Because they can't get it off you because you're dead. Yeah. But he basically, though, had beyond that, there was also the philosophy of, be nice to people, have a positive impact on their life, and most of all, be happy within yourself. That was one of the things that he told me when I was about 4 or 5 that I really remember. Him saying, you are the one that can make you happy. No one else can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. That changes through life, and finding a partner that can help make you happy. But again, it's how you feel that, and you're in control of it. And I think that's a really important point, is the positive things that you can bring into your own life, then you can share with other people. Makes an absolute difference to how you've lived your life, I think.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, for sure.
So what do you like to do when you're not out shooting and not taking photos? Engineering.
Yeah. The job's pretty full on at the moment, but I don't know. I try to keep fit, catch up with friends. I'm a crazy plant lady, actually.
Okay.
I have like probably about 100 indoor plants. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge when I start working away more. But that's kind of the main things, especially in summer.
Set up a hydroponics room or something for them.
Sorry?
You'll have to set up a hydroponics room or something for them.
Yeah, I need to sort that out. But I think for me, especially living in Perth is not something I see myself doing long term. I'll probably stay here another couple of years. But I definitely want to move somewhere like Europe or maybe even Canada, if I can get a job there in the field that I'm working in, because I would much rather spend my weekends going to the mountains. That is just, I'm definitely a mountain girl. I love the beach, but, hiking in mountains and photography in mountainous landscapes is definitely something that I enjoy more than shooting beaches, I think. So, that was something that I look forward to in the future.
Fair Fair enough. I don't blame you. It's something that I'd like to do. Do you print much of your work?
Now that you say that, I'm looking up at my wall in my study, which has got I've got like 16 little square photos of places that I've been. So yeah, here and there, and I've got a couple. I've got a photo of an elephant's eye, like a close-up of an elephant's eye that I took in Cambodia. I've got that on my wall, and I've got a photo from Nepal on my wall. So I do print a fair bit of my own work, but yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, so only a couple of questions to go. Are there any photographers out there that you think should be on the podcast?
Oh, I was going to say probably Julia. I know that she's, it's been really interesting to learn more about her and the way that she, I think she's had some struggles with in terms of Instagram and just getting so absorbed in the social media side of photography.
Yep.
As opposed to just bringing it back to creating, So I think she would probably be a good one. I don't know if you've done one with Laurie yet either.
Laurie Grace Bailey, yes.
Listen to that one.
That one came out before Christmas, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And other people as well, and people that have helped me a lot in the NFT world is James Elliott.
Yep.
He's got a collection out that's got a really, really moving story behind it. And we bonded because we both lost a parent. So I think he's would definitely have a lot to say. I know that he's a little bit shy in speaking sometimes, but that would be really good to get him on a podcast. And also Eric Bleacher as well. He does a lot of not mental health, they're like recovery spaces for recovering addicts, alcohol addicts. And yeah, he's got a lot to share for sure. He's been a massive inspiration to me and help to me along the way as well. There's so many good photographers and just artists in general.
And I've got a long list, but I like to add to it just to make sure that I've got people to talk to, because I really enjoy doing it. All right, one more question, and it's definitely the most important question that I can ask you right now, and that is, do you like pineapple on pizza?
Yes. To be honest, I probably won't order it by default, but if it's there, yes, I'll eat it.
I'm kind of the same. I definitely probably wouldn't order it by default, but if it's there, I won't pick it off.
Yeah, same. That's a good question.
As I say, it's a very important one, and I think we've got to get to the bottom of this with landscape photographers and find out where they stand on pineapple.
What's been the proportions of answers so far?
To be honest, I haven't actually counted. I should do that. But I think it's probably about 50-50 at the moment.
Okay.
I mean, there's a few people that are neutral, kind of like us, where if it's there, you whatever, But there's definitely some strong opinions on it. I was talking to Julian Lalo recently, and he's Italian, of course, and so it's a big no for him.
Yeah, that's so funny.
All right, well, thank you so much for talking to me, Courts. It's been absolutely fantastic catching up with you, and really interesting to hear a little bit more about your story and how you do what you do. Where can people find your work? Yeah,
of course. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. It's been awesome to talk a bit more about the art. So I've got work available on OpenSea. I've got my first collection release, Alpine Glow, that the primary sales have sold out, but there's a few available on secondary. I've also got work on Foundation, and I'm looking at setting up a website just to have a bit more of a portfolio of the photos that I've taken so far, but also on Instagram as well, as where I post a lot of stuff. So, yeah.
All right, no worries. I'll make sure that there's links to all of that in the show notes when the podcast comes out.
Awesome. Sounds good.
No worries. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Grant.
Pleasure. Thanks for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as YouTube. I'm Grant Swinburne and hope to see you out shooting soon.